Evening folks and welcome back. It's Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, and time for some development. Now, earlier on during the day when I wasn't streaming, I created a widget for our space credits. So, we forgot to add it earlier. So we're going to create widget. And we're going to zoom into that, look at that, and there we go, space credits. We can then add to viewport. And there we go. So we should have an first iteration of another part of our HUD, which may actually have to move due to the crafting lists, but we shall stick with it for the moment and see how it looks. As I said, you might move it bottom right would have to be the place to go, or in the center, or up the top center. Not sure yet, but we'll have a look at that. Now, we had an issue earlier where I was trying to get the worker component to basically send the message to its parent, and due to being distracted, I cleared my head after the stream and quickly realised that we need the get owner to actually send the message. Okay, so now we should be adding. Hey Jerome, good evening. How are you doing today? Nice to see you back. So we've got our interface that's now adding workers. So what we're going to have to do now is we're going to go into our building. I'm pretty sure it's in here somewhere, and if I remember rightly, it is building details, and it's in here that we have this progress bar. Okay, and now what we can do is we can set this progress bar going by the workers we require, or sorry, the workers we actually have. This at the moment is just hard coded to a value. We can check what this actually is, and it appears to be an absolute mess, but we can have a look here, and here's our progress bar, and it's PV workers. Yep. Okay, so we're gonna have to change this. Or are we? No, we're not. We can go to the graph, right? And basically, we can let it do that stuff. We can let it do that. We don't, we maybe care if what type it is. But in the meantime, right, what we'll do is we will create, actually I'm going to tidy this whole thing up, and then we might actually turn it into a macro of sorts. But in the meantime, we shall straighten this up because I'm not enjoying the look of that. I'm not enjoying the look of that at all. It's hurting my eyes by its ugliness. We're going to move this down, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a function, and we're going to say update worker bar. Okay, and then we have the building, so we can get the building, and then we can say worker component we should be able to say get worker component. Okay. Okay. Get component. It's comp building worker. Comp building worker. Activate get component has tag get owner. Here we go. Get component comp building worker. And we've got sticky mouse mat again. Come on. We want get struct worker. And we can break this, and these are both integers, so we're going to change this to a float, then we can duplicate that, then basically we divide float by float, and then we get PB workers, then we say %, and we set the percent to this value here. Okay. And next we put that in there. We drag this back. And we do that. And we're going to make this pure. Actually, do we want to make it pure? I don't think we do. Okay. So there we go. So now if we go back to our event graph, and then we update the worker bar. Plug this in, save that, and now what we can do is if we press play, we should be able to do a probe and a minor. Okay, and if we hit the up key a few times, that should add some workers. Here we have our space credit thing, which isn't big enough, but it is there. We haven't updated it, obviously. Okay, so now you can see that it's doing absolutely jack. Okay, awesome. Right, am I doing something weird here with the progress bar? Let's add a breakpoint. Right, and we'll click on add another. We'll come in here. We shall step into, and we're getting nothing back at the moment, which is understandable because we need to step over, and that is 0. And that is the current workers of 1, and the max workers is 0. So that's a bit bizarre. Okay, so we need to stop that for a second, and we need to make sure that this is actually firing and this is actually updating. Right, now I think there's something a bit weird about this. So we'll do it that way, and now we'll test it out. Just play that, press continue, hit the probes, and see where it goes with there. What have you been up to, Jerome? What's new with you? You working on anything? So we shall see how this goes. Okay, so we're going to hit our button a few times, which means that our minor, we should be able to look at our comp worker and it says 1. So this is not firing by the looks of things for whatever reason. So that is lots. The length of that is 6. So that's 6 workers and 1 max worker. And that's struct workers. So how come this doesn't say that? How come this says 1 in 10? Unless that isn't in the minor. Right? So the issue here, we can check to see if this has been fired or not, right? By checking in the minor to see if the minor is firing the set new process time. So we basically check in here to see if this is setting the process again. So basically we fire our probes. Okay. I really need some sound effects here because it's really, really quiet while I'm developing. I suppose it would probably mess with the... Right, so if I hit that, so we're obviously setting this, right? Resume that, and it's firing the process in the minor. Okay, so if I step into that, okay, and step over, we're getting the current minor workers, which we don't have, but we have 1 current worker with 10, so it's at 0.1. So if I resume that, right, and then I hit up again, we set the process again, we can step into that, step over, and we have still 1. Okay, so for whatever reason, this isn't setting the worker component. Okay, so what we're going to have to do here, well, we don't need to do that. What we can do is we can just delete that, right? Make struct worker component. The current workers becomes that. We can break that and get the max workers. Now that should be us. Okay, so let's try that again. Let's try this again and see what happens. Okay, so we're going to add a couple of workers. I don't know why I hit that button. It was basically because I got thrown. Okay. So once this can process, right, so if we hit that button, we set the process, we can step into, we step over, then we check these numbers here. That says 1, that says 10. Then we resume. Right, we step into, step over, okay. Now, it looks to me right, okay. Okay, we need to stop this. We've got this comp worker. We've already added that, right? So this, we were using the wrong one. We want the inherited one. And get workers. Okay. So let's undo that, right? Because I want to see that struct worker. Right. So this is the start off values, right? So what we've got to do is we've got to return this one. Okay. And it's actually this one that needs to be set now. And we can plug this one in. Right, as long as we don't do that. So we can plug this in here, then drag it down, and we should now this should be us, okay? So if we press play here and we do our probes again, so this is going to build our miner. Then once we build the miner, we can check the numbers again. And once we've got this part down, that we know that the numbers are right, we can then actually plug it in to start thinking about how we actually implement it when the player actually buys a worker, or let's say hires a worker. Okay, so we hit this button and resume, hit it again, resume, hit it again, and what we're going to do this time is we're going to step into right, and we're going to step over just to dry run this through and check the values here. So this should say 3, which is correct, and this should say 10, which is correct. And if we resume that and we click on this, right, we can resume that, and there you go, 3 out of 10. Awesome sauciness. Right, now if we close that and we add a couple more, right, so that's 3 more, so we've now got 6 out of 10. And now we click on this and resume that, saucy, got our 6 out of 10 on our progress bar. And just as an idea of how this affects the processing speed, if we step into this and then we step over, our mining speed divided by 1, which at the moment is 1, so we would be running at 10% or 10 seconds per process, is now going to be 0.7. Right, so our time is going to be a lot less. So it's 1.4, okay, per sec. It's 1.4 per process complete instead of 10. When this is like 10%, this figure becomes 0.1, and then this comes out as 10. So it takes 10 seconds to complete. So we can actually see this. We can actually see this in progress, right? Because we can actually do this, and I can show you what it actually means, right? So let's have a look at this and how it looks in the game when we actually do this. We'll close that down. We'll get somewhere next to here, right? So we shall build something round about there. Okay. And then what we shall do right? So we'll say resume. We've got one worker because you always start with one worker, okay? And then we shall close that. That was bauxite, was it? Was that bauxite? Yeah, bauxite, okay? And now we shall do a conveyor. And we shall try that again. I'm quite liking that feature actually of being able to delete the conveyor. So if we look here, right? And you can see that's pretty darn slow. Okay, but if we start adding workers, this should get faster. And you can see now that the barrels are definitely coming out faster. So the interesting thing is, if we step into this, it's going to be how many actually do we have. At this minute 0.5, okay, so we can resume that, and we're at 0.5 there. So resume that, resume that, resume that. And now we're at 0.7. We can resume that and resume that. And resume that, resume that. And we shall disable that and resume it. And there we go. Okay, so that's all working nicely. The thing I want to do here, right, is I want to check the miner to see if so we do that. Right. Okay, so the question is, where's the begin play? Here it's here. Right, get workers. Clear. And that says set process, which is actually, yeah, that's right. Okay, that'll actually make sense. Because the miner actually starts processing into its own output component before, even if it isn't connected to anything yet. And that's why you get the burst of barrels at the start. Okay. So the other thing we're going to need to do here is when you add so let's say you get the current workers, max workers, then basically this number here should be clamped at 1. So that should be clamped between 0 and 1. So that it doesn't matter how many more workers you add, it ain't going to go over 1. Right? So you can't get 100%. Or, sorry, you can't get over 100%. Okay, so that should be good for the miner. Now I'm going to have to implement this code in the other places. Yeah, it looks like the process has to be on an individual basis, because basically each of these is going to make different sounds, it's going to be different animations and stuff, so fundamentally we don't want to do that. So we can save that. And the next thing we need to do is we need to go to the FE controller, right? And we need to create, well, not that. We don't actually want that. What we want to do is create a variable. And it's going to be W space credits, and it is going to be a W space credits widget. Now, do we have other widgets here? Yeah, we do. Here's the widgets here, right? So what we should do, there's the main menu. Widget. So what we should actually do is put these all in a category called widget refs. Okay. So this can go in the same category of widget refs. And same with that. In here, we change that to widget refs. And that's going to keep everything a bit tidier and not so much piling up here. So we now have our widget ref, and anytime on begin play, right, this widget refs, so space credits, we want to go in here, so we get our game. Where did I put this? Yeah, I just put it on the outside because it's not really in a graph. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to save that. We may need the controller later, but we're not going to worry about that for the moment. We're going to create a custom event, and it's going to say update credits, and it's going to have an input, and it's going to be credits. It's going to be an integer, and then we are going to get our text credits, get that, then set text text, and it's basically going to come in here, and that's going to go in there. That's going to convert it to text, save that. So now anytime money changes, we can just basically update through the controller. Okay, so once that does that, what we can do is we can come in here, actually we get the widget, well actually we don't, what we do is we set this widget, plug it in there, right, then we update credits, and we're going to need to move this a bit, move this along a bit. This is going to go in here, this is going to go in here, that will be deleted, that can go up there, this can go in here, but what we'll do is we shall create a couple of reroute nodes and make it look a bit nicer. Save that, and now when we come into the game, apparently we still have 0. Okay, that's a bit weird. Oh, no it's not. because I'd forgot to do that. Right, that makes a bit more sense, don't you think? So, let's look again. Now it should work. There we go, 127. Okay. Right, so let's go back to our space credit widget. Right. Now, that isn't going to work. But fundamentally, this ain't big enough. Right? Put it back to auto. Right, so we're going to put this to 1. No, we're not. We're going to put it to 0.5 again. Now, this is a special widget, and I don't know why it's this particular size. See, this one, we're going to... Let's do that, right? And then this. Don't know why that's squished. Right? It would appear to me, if I do that, overall angle. Right, that only changes this icon, right? But it doesn't change the base here. Now there we go, that's a bit better. Right, but it's still not. If I now do this one and then do size to content, now it does look a bit better. I'll give it that. It does look a bit better. I'm going to say 0 there. I'm going to say 0 there. Then I'm going to say 0 there. And then what I'm going to do is, actually, we're going to do that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put a spacer in here. But first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to pad this, right? So we're going to say 50 and 50. Now, that's already beginning to look more like what we want, right? And this canvas, or at least this, is going to be to the bottom right. So we shall say 0. And that one right? And now what we can do is, well, we can't change the padding for this, but we can change the padding for this. Well, hang on a minute. What we could do is we could stick a border around that, right? We could stick a border around that. And it ain't going to give us padding, right? So, undo that. I must admit, I'm not 100% brilliant at yeah, we need to wrap this, let's say, in another canvas panel, right? And let's see what we've got, right? Canvas panel, right? Okay. This canvas panel again has no border. Now we could of course just say minus 10, minus 10. I think that's the way we'll go to start with. This should be actually 10. No, that's good. Right, so is that right? Let's have a look and see if that's right. Apparently not. Right, so yeah, that's more like it. Still not very big, is it? Still not very big. Oh well. I mean, because that's to size, right, that is filling to size. That's not size to content. What we should do is that should fill this whole box, right, and 0 and 0. And why this has suddenly decided that it wants to do that, I've got no idea. Right, so it just doesn't like that at all, does it? If we wrap this in a border, it's still not really happening for us. Right, what we'll do is we'll get it back to kind of what it was. And this canvas panel is going to size to content. what we can actually do here is do that. Right, we'll stop that, we'll save that, and we'll have a look at that. Better. Definitely better. Okay. And on that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and grab a drink and a cigarette, and I shall be right back in about 3 minutes. Don't go anywhere, guys. I'll be right back. We are back, folks. And what are we doing? I've noticed it's been very quiet tonight in the chat. Maybe Tuesday nights are quiet night on YouTube? I don't know. Right, so basically what we need to do now is the only time that money changes is when you actually complete a trade either way. So if we go into our trading widget, everything or all the places where it can possibly happen is here in trading main, and especially this button. So if we are buying, we update the space credits. We're not doing this anymore, and we basically grab the controller, right? We can grab the controller, then get widget space credits, you know what? It could do it itself if we actually wanted it to, when you think about it. If we go back into here, space credits, okay? And we go back to here. Right, all we need to actually do is add, well, let's do it the old-fashioned way, shall we? Let's create an event, event construct. Now, once we've done our event construct, what we can do is we can say get player controller, and then what we do is we cast it to FE controller. Then what we can do with that is we can promote this to a variable, and then all we do is we click on here, delete that, go to here, delete, plug that in there, okay, and this is always going to have a reference to the player controller now, so we don't actually need this. All we need to do is with the controller, we just say space credits and get, then we plug it in here. Then this can be updated that we remove that. And now I'm not 100% sure if this is the more efficient way to do it, right? But this basically means that the widget can update itself without, you know, passing in a variable or anything like that. So it looks to me like a kind of better way of doing it. So in here, what we can basically do is refresh these nodes and delete that. Okay, so we can save that, and then we can go back to our trading widget, and we can just say update credits, and that's it. That is that basically done. Right, and if we are selling, we fundamentally do the same thing here. Okay, we basically duplicate that, and we pop it in here. And we're done. And that basically takes care of our space credits. So we can test that out, and you'll notice now that it doesn't work, which is obviously fantastic. Let's check on that. Have I screwed this up somehow? I don't see how that. Access none, trying to read the property controller. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. This does not make an awful lot of sense, to be fair. Unless I didn't compile it. I think I did. Right, let's run that. Right, continue. Okay, cast the FE controller. Step over. That's none, but this is our controller. Resume. Okay. Okay, I get the picture. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hang on a tickety boo. That ain't right. That can't be right. Right, I'll tell you what we'll do. This is weird. Unless this is some sort of... No, that can't be right. That cannot be right. Right, I'm arguing with Unreal Engine here that this can't be right. Okay. Okay. Fine. We'll do it my way. Right? We'll do it my way, okay? Just to make you happy. Once we set this, we'll say update credits, okay? We'll do it that way. And then in our FE controller, we won't do that. Okay? Is that going to make you happy? Alright, so it's only when it's being constructed. Right, so you're going to be happy. Step over that. Step over that. Step into that. Step over that. And our controller is something now. So this should be 127. Yep, resume. Thank you. Okay. So that solved our issue. And now what we can do is, if we do a number 5 and we sell, now I should really make this blue, but in the meantime, if we trade that, there we go. if we trade some widgets, there we go. Did we actually just do that there? Right. Sell at 290, 340. Right, if we sell this, okay. And notice the scale makes this a bit fuzzy, the size of it. Right, so what we shall do is this spacer here, or sorry, at least padding on this is going to be a lot less. Right, and what we'll do is the scale on this horizontal box, is that not the one, or is it this one? Yeah, it's this one. So we can change that to 1.5 and 1.5. We'll stop that, save it. And what we'll do in the meantime is we're going to go back to our trading menu, and these buttons need to be changed. Right? So, and these buttons need to be changed as well, actually. In the meantime, what we'll do is we'll do that and that. Okay, so we get nice blue buttons. Then we shall click on that and copy the color. And we'll paste it in there and paste it in there. And in the cancel button we shall do exactly the same. Paste it in there. Paste it in there. Paste it in there. Okay. And I believe we can do that there. And there. And that kind of gets us to a point where we are more in sync with the rest of our interface. Okay. Small gains tonight, but we'll not worry about that. We've got this now working as it should. There must have been a time delay or something for this to come up with the access none, which I don't understand, because you're basically creating a widget. So I'm imagining it takes a second or two for the creation to happen, and I was basically calling it too fast. So that's my excuse anyway. I'm not too sure if that is the correct answer, but we shall go with that anyway. So our space credits here, our basic first iteration of the button or our HUD is here. Now what we're going to look at what are we going to look at, my friends? Well, we should, yeah, that's what we're going to do, and that's why we were here. It was because we wanted to do workers, right? We wanted to tie in workers. These should be the other way around. Right? So, if we buy a worker, well, at the moment we can't because it's like 14,000. So, we're going to need to do something with that. So, what we shall do is if we go into DT items, which is in the recipes. So we go up, have a look in recipes, and then go to DT items. You'll see at the bottom here we have workers, and the cost is 14,000. So let's just change that to 10 in the correct place, of course, which is there. Save that, and now we can afford a worker. Now, there's a few ways we can go about this, but the very interesting thing is we could do it where the workers go into the player's, let's say, inventory, and then they can assign the worker. Or we could automatically assign the worker. Right, so basically the worker goes wherever there's the lowest number of workers, right? So basically now that doesn't give the player as much control. Now there is a couple of gameplay elements we could play with here, which would kind of make it interesting. Because, right, if the player works out that if they make a certain item, and then that item sells for a lot of money, then they might just put all of their workers into that making that item and nothing else, right? Whereas if we automatically place the workers in a slot, then the player can't do that. So in the first instance, let's do it that way, okay? And from here, what we're going to have to do, there's only ever going to be one worker available, I think. Now, it doesn't really matter, because what we can do is just loop it with the number of workers that are actually sold, right? But the workers are a special case, so we're going to have to deal with that. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our FE controller, and we're going to move this up a bit. Okay, and then what we're going to do is a custom event. and we're going to say add worker to building. Oh, I'll tell you what, we shall build it with expandability in mind. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll actually add an input, and that's going to be number of workers. Okay, and that's going to be an integer. And the next thing we will do is we'll go into our trading main, then we shall select our box or button for completing the trade. Then we shall check so we're only ever going to be buying workers, right? You can't sell a worker, right? So it's only going to be here. So we're going to remove the product for the ship and we're going to add to inventory, but this is where it's going to change slightly. Okay, so what we can actually do here is break off of here and we can say equals but not equals. If it doesn't equal the worker, right, we're going to need a branch. So we do remove it from the ship, right? And if this is true, i.e. it's not a worker, then we do add the product to the inventory. Okay? So we shall tidy this bit up a little bit. Having said that, we're going to completely make a mess of it again, but hey ho. Because this line is going to come out here. We're going to say add, well, we don't know what that is yet. So, hey Pusher, hi again. We are working on workers tonight. What we'll do is we'll tidy this up. We'll keep this other part tidy by what we'll do is we'll create another custom event, a very small one. Granted, it's a very small one, but we'll just pass it through so that we can keep it nice and tidy, so that we don't need to do lots and lots of so what we're going to say is call add worker, and it's going to have the corresponding number of workers, and that's going to get put as an integer, and then this is going to get the controller. Where are you, controller? There you are. It's going to get controller, and it's going to say add worker to building. Okay, and basically that is going to go straight in there. So the reason for this very small custom event is just to keep things tidy up in the other area where we're doing all the removing from inventory and all that stuff. I'll show you in a minute what I mean. It'll just keep it nice and tidy. Right, so basically in here we're checking if the thing bought was a worker, right? It's not a worker. And if it is a worker, we're basically going to call add worker. Right? And that keeps things pretty tidy. And then we just pull that to there. So if it's a worker, we call add worker, and then this calls it on the actual controller, okay? And I could have put this, actually, you know what, that's not really saving us any time, is it? Or anything, because that can just go basically over there. Right, forget that idea, it's not really tidying anything up. So what I'll do is I shall move that to there, and I shall move that to there. I shall delete that, and I'll just put that where the other one was, and that basically keeps us tidy, right? I mean, in theory we should probably move all of this up a bit to tidy it up. We should move all of this up a bit and then move this down a bit just to give us a bit more space in between. Yeah, that looks better. I could always collapse these to functions anyway, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. Right, so now what we need to do is we need to go and actually create our function in the FE controller. Right? So, in effect, this is going to be a for loop. And I'm going to start at 0 to 1. Well, actually, you know what? I think this should be -1. Right? So, the next thing we need to do is basically go in and get the code from here. Right? This is the code that basically goes and creates the workers, okay? Now, this is just basically adding it to every single one. We could kind of use this actually, to a degree. right? In fact, we could use this. Yeah, we could use this, no problem. All we need to do is actually, all we need to do in here, pretty sure it's not, in the end, it might look difficult, but if you take your time and you build up your logic slowly, and bit by bit, you'll get there. Okay, that's the way I can describe it. But at the point, what this is doing here is it's basically building a worker and then adding it to itself. And at the moment, when I do it, all I do is press a button and it adds, basically gets every actor of the type building. And it's adding it to every single building. So what we actually need to do is get our FE controller here to return back a building that needs a worker. Okay? So what we can do is, for each of these, we're going to do, what I'm going to do is say get all actors of class. And we're going to get base building. Okay. And then for each of these, basically all we're going to do, right, is we're going to loop round and find out how many workers they have and how many workers is the max, right? And then we can work out the percentage of workers that a building has, and then what we can do is we can select the one with the lowest percentage and swap it in and out of a position, you know, that selects that building, right? So most likely the best idea here is to create a function, and we shall just call it return building with fewest workers. Right, so this is me doing that process, right? All I'm doing is I'm breaking it now into return a building with the fewest workers. Okay, and if we go back to here, sorry, we go back to the event graph, right? And I've just selected the wrong event graph. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to call this here, and then this is going to move into our event, into our function, right? Now we might return a base building, or we might just do the whole thing in here, right? But if we split up our logic, when we talk through what our logic needs to be, then we can just split it up into bits and then just do a little bit at a time and make sure that we're getting the right results at the right time. And on that, I actually need to pop to the restroom, So I shall be back in a minute, but it's good to see you here, Pusha, again. Always nice to see returning faces that I recognise, but I shall be back in a moment. Okay guys, we're back and let's finish this part off tonight, shall we? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a local variable, and it's going to be current building, and it's going to be of the type base building. Okay, and when we come in here, we're going to make sure that's empty, so we're going to set it to nothing. And that'll be that. Okay, so now where the fun starts, we're going to have to get work component, then we're going to split it or break it anyway. Get I think it's get struct worker. Yep, get struct worker. Then we're going to break it. And then we're going to go current workers. And we're going to say to float. And we're going to duplicate that. And we're going to do that. It's fine, Pusher, you're always welcome when you can come around. That's up to you. Understand, life happens. And we sometimes don't have all the time we want, but you're welcome when you show up. So what we shall do from here is we shall divide this float by float. Okay. And we shall actually need another local variable. And it's going to be min value, and that's going to be a float. Back to school. That's a long time ago for me, I'm afraid. A long time ago. Right. So we have to set the minimum value here. Okay. So the maximum value this can possibly be is 1. Okay. So we're going to set this to 1. Because it's basically a percentage, right? So the maximum you can have is 100%, which is 1. Okay? If we normalize a percentage value, the maximum percentage value is a 1. Okay, so we've got to say if that is less than did we do greater than? Yeah, we did. We want less than. So we want, if that is less than the minimum value, right? Now we're going to save one more value here, and it's going to be index. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Don't know why I did that. So basically, darn it. Right, so this can probably go, right? But we'll keep it there for now. And what we'll say is this is going to be the index. And it's going to be an integer. Okay. And then we're going to branch this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set this index value to 0, which is fine. Okay. And we don't need to set this, because what we're actually going to do is we're going to pass that building back. Or maybe we won't, but right, so anyway, the point here is if this value is less, then we basically set both of these values, right? And the minimum value becomes this, or the new minimum value becomes that. And the new index becomes the index that we were using here. Okay? Right. And I'm probably going to have to move all of this along a bit. Right? Now, it's not exactly that we need to worry about that, but when this completes, right? Basically, when this completes, we're going to get a copy of this index, and then that is basically the building that we want. Okay? So off here, this is a base building. We can say get worker component, and then we can say add single worker. And that, believe it or not, my friends, should be that done. That is all we need to do. Okay? Now, hopefully we understood that. Basically, we set our index to 0 and our minimum value to 1, right? Then we get all the actors that are the base building. Then we loop through them all, and basically this will get the lowest value for the percentage of workers, right? And it will set the index, and then basically we get the index of that building back, we return the building, and then we tell it to add a worker. And that, quite simply, is that. So what we can do is we can add a breakpoint here, right? And we can test it. So we continue that. We basically hit number 5 to get our thing up. We click on buy, we scroll down, we get a worker, we add a worker, we'll add 1, we press trade, and there we go. It's adding a worker, and we should see what it's adding the worker to. It's actually adding it to the warehouse. Okay, we can resume that, and we can basically do it again. We can do it with 4. So we do the trade. Remember, we've got this looped, so it's going to add a worker to the warehouse again. And I'm thinking that because the warehouse has, it's probably adding these all to the warehouse, to be honest, because of the way this is set up. Right, so what we'll do is we'll check on that. So we clicked on the warehouse, it's got that, and you'll notice that it's got 5 workers, right? Now that is because remove product from ship. Okay. Right, we can fix that. That's basically we're never going to have more than one worker, right? So we can deal with that. So we shall dismiss that for now, and then what we'll do is we're going to check right where we save our number of workers, etc. Right, handcrafting time meshes, etc, etc. And I'm pretty sure it might be right. Let's have a look. So if we go to not there, if we go to the FE controller, we've got our comp worker, right? So if we go to our comp worker, that's going to go to our data table names, right? But if we check where this is getting set, right, so that's adding a single worker. Now I'm guessing that these right, we'll do 1 and 10. Okay, we might need to do a bit more work on this, but for the warehouse, well, this will be for everything, so we shall check what this actually is. But this should be set up in the base building, right? So if we check in here now and we look for the warehouse, right, wherever it is, right, there's the warehouse. Okay, and we can look in here and we look at the struct worker, it says 1 in 10, right? So that's exactly what we want. Okay, so now if we do that, it's probably no, that should work now, right? We can do our worker and trade, right? And it's adding it to the warehouse again, but let's cancel that and let's do it again. Right, we're buying again, and we're buying a worker. So we'll trade that. And this is kind of scary because it still says 1. Okay, now the individual workers, it now has 1 member. Okay, actually that's what it should say. So it's doing the warehouse again, which is fine, but you'll notice now that we've got 3. Now if we close this, cancel that, and do that again, and we buy, then there's no way that this should pick the warehouse again. Oh yes it will. I haven't got a miner in here to offset against it. Right, okay, stop that. And it's still giving us this for each loop error. Remove product from ship. Right, we'll need to check that out. Right, so we shall refresh that, continue that, and what we're going to do is probe. And the easiest way to do this, funnily enough, is basically to check out this miner and see if it ever gets anything added to it. Right? So we can look at this miner, we can get its building worker thing, and there's its current workers, right? So if this ever goes up, then we are selecting different buildings to add the workers to. So we can click on that and trade and resume. It hasn't went up yet. We can trade and resume. We can trade and resume, and it's not going up. It's a bit disappointing, wouldn't you say? We can trade, we can check the building, and it's still going to the warehouse all the time for some reason. On that, guys, we're left with a bit of an issue. And I'm going to leave it at that for the evening. I've got this other issue to check out. In the meantime, I'm going to leave that on the screen so that I can go and fix it. But if you've joined tonight, thank you. And if you want to check out the description for my Discord, previous game that's on Steam and Patreon, then please do. But have a good night, and I'll see you all tomorrow at 2 PM Central. Bye bye for now.